I interviewed my mum recently, not on the podcast, and I want to do that. But I interviewed my mum recently at a dinner. We were at a dinner for my sister's birthday. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to interview my mum like a podcast guest.
Yeah.
At dinner. And so I started asking her questions. I was like, Mom, like, how did you get your first job? And like, especially I find like Indian, South Asian parents, they don't really talk about, I don't know, at least mine don't. They don't talk about the struggles they went through or the hardships or the
You never talk about the problem.
You never talk about the problems. And so I was asking my mom. She told me that she was from Yemen. So my mom was born and raised in Yemen. She speaks Arabic. Unfortunately, she did not teach me, but she's of Indian descent, an Indian origin. And in Yemen, there was a war going on between the people of Yemen and the Brits because the Brits were in control at the time. So my mom said she was studying for her exams while there were Yemeni soldiers on her roof trying to protect Yemen, and they had to study for their school exams. Crazy. And like, that's what she was going through. And then when she moved to London, she kept her British passport by moving to London at the time because Yemen got its independence. They moved with like £8, which is like $10. Like, you know, and at that time, that's not bad, but that's practically nothing. And of course, they built up from scratch and, you know, for themselves did really well. But the idea still comes to, we have no financial education.
Yeah.
If you could start with, and we'll dive into each of these deeper, if you could tell me, what are the 3 habits that keep us in that poor or poverty mindset, as you said?
Sure.
And what are the healthy habits that bring us into the wealthy mindset?
Sure. So the 3, I think, biggest bad habits when it comes to money. First, probably the most obvious, I would say, is people following the 2 S's, where you're spending or saving all of your money. You'll never become wealthy if you do that. Number 2 would be you blindly follow the system without questioning the way the system works. And number 3 is you don't understand how money works. So if we start with number 1, the 2 S's, save and spend. Now it's interesting. If you look at the financial statements for the majority of people in America or even across the world, the way it looks is you make money, you pay taxes, you spend money, and then you wonder where all your money went.
Literally.
And so the majority of people don't have any plan for their money. And that's why the majority of people have little to no savings, and the majority of Americans have little to no investments. Right now, about half of America has 0 investments. And I'm talking about 0 401k, 0 IRA, 0 stock market accounts, 0 real estate investments, 0 gold investments, nothing. And then out of the next half of Americans that have an investment, only half of those have an investment outside of their 401k or IRA. So you have a very small percent, about a quarter of America, working America, that has any investments on their own. When you go back to the saving and spending, we're in a spending culture. America has a consumerism culture, and I joke about this, but the way I like to say it is traditionally Indian people make $1 to spend 20 cents. American people make $1 to spend $2.
Yeah.
Thanks to the help of credit lines of credit. This is just the culture that we're in, where it's very okay and normalized to spend money even if you can't afford something.
You don't have it.
And what are you doing? Well, you're spending all your money making everybody else around you rich, but you yourself, you might look rich, but you're actually broke. There's a reason why the owner and CEO of Louis Vuitton is the richest person in the world, versus the majority of people who wear Louis Vuitton are broke. The people who are wearing Louis Vuitton are trying to look rich, and how are you doing that? Well, you're making the owner of Louis Vuitton rich by doing that. And so this is where you got to understand, there's nothing wrong with wearing designer stuff. There's nothing wrong with having nice stuff. There's nothing wrong with wanting nice things, but you have to be able to afford it first. I used to guest teach in Detroit public schools. And when I used to teach there, it's a rough school district. I would talk to the kids about life, motivation and entrepreneurship and money and success. And one of the things that I would ask is, how many of you have a job? Almost all of them raised their hand saying that they had a job. My next follow-up question was, how many of you have a bank account? Nobody raised their hand. So I asked, what do you do with your paycheck? They said, well, we get a physical check, then we go to the liquor store, we get it cashed. The liquor store owner takes 1 to 10%. Then you buy pop, candy, a bunch of junk on the way out. And by the time you're out of the store, you've already given away half of your paycheck. I call it a net zero thinking, where we think in terms of spending. If I have $1,000, I can go out and buy this handbag, this nice thing. If I have 10 grand, I can go on this nice vacation. If I have 50 grand, I can go on and buy this nice car. We think in terms of spending because we think if I have this money, how can I spend it? Now, if you break away from that and now you start creating a buffer and you don't spend all of your money, the next problem is we save our money. Because for me, the only financial education that I was given was save your money. Because if you're not spending it, now you are building up a big bank account. And if you have a big bank account, you'll be wealthy. But the reality is you will never be able to become wealthy through your savings. Your savings will never make you wealthy. And if you don't believe me, I'll give you just a mathematical term. Your savings right now are growing by essentially nothing, but let's just say 1%. And I'm being very, very generous here. If your savings grow by 1%, and inflation is higher than 1%, and we can see now inflation is extremely high, but even before the 2020 pandemic, inflation was still higher than 1%. We were 2 or 3%. Inflation means that the value of your savings are dropping. So if inflation is higher than your savings, that means that your savings are losing value each and every day. Every day that you save your money in the bank, you are slowly becoming poorer each and every day, and most of us never see it happen. Now, this doesn't mean you shouldn't save any money. This just means you have to understand how to save your money strategically, because wealthy people do not want to save all their money. They want to save their money for an emergency, they save their money for an investment, or they save their money for a big purchase. If it doesn't fall into one of those three things, you don't want to save your money, because now you're saving money. Your savings are just making you poorer each and every day.